10 years ago, my wife cheated on me and walked out to be with an old friend. Now that he's ditched her, she's crawling back. I'm 61 now, but this all started about 10 years ago, right when life hit me like a freight train. Lydia, my wife at the time, was 53, and that's when we went through a messy divorce. We'd been married for 12 years, but we'd been together for 15 overall, and we had 2 wonderful kids together, who are now 13 and 12. Lydia wasn't my first wife, though. She was actually my second. My first marriage was with my high school sweetheart, the woman I thought I'd grow old with. She was the love of my life. We had something really special, a deep connection that felt rare. Tragically, she passed away in an accident. We didn't have any kids, and that made her loss even harder. It felt like I'd lost everything. After she died, I was completely adrift. I was in my early 40s, stumbling through the days with no direction. Grief swallowed me whole, and I started leaning on alcohol and some pretty self-destructive habits just to numb the pain. Now that I'm inching into my 60s, I'm trying to live with more grace and gratitude. Even though I've been through hell, somehow I've kept pushing forward. I run a small real estate business. It's nothing fancy, but it gives my life some rhythm and purpose. Life hasn't made things easy, not by a long shot, but I'm learning to face it all with a bit more wisdom and reflection. When I look back, I can honestly say my love life has had way more lows than highs. Still, every heartbreak, every betrayal has taught me something I needed to learn. And though I've been deeply hurt and let down, those experiences shaped the man I am now. These days, I'm doing my best to live with more intention and a whole lot more hope. That's when Mila entered the picture. We met at a bar of all places. She was sitting with a friend from college, both of them working through their own relationship messes, and somehow we just connected. I won't pretend I was doing great back then. I was still pretty bruised from the past, just looking for someone who could help carry the weight. Mila became that person. I got emotionally attached to her quicker than I expected. After about a year of dating, she brought up the idea of marriage. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I was really ready to take that step again. But Mila wanted something serious, and I didn't want to risk losing her. So I said yes without overthinking it. She was in her early 30s and had made it clear she wanted to settle down. Just before we met, she had ended a long and messy friends with benefits situation. She had caught feelings, but he hadn't. And after years of going in circles, she was finally ready to move on. So when Mila told me it was either marriage or nothing, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. I didn't want to lose someone else. I agreed, hoping maybe this time things would finally work out. We had a small, quiet wedding, just us and a few close people. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. And you know what? I don't regret it. Life with Lydia before all the chaos was actually pretty good. We did a lot of traveling before we had kids, and even after they were born, we held things together for most of those 15 years. But things started falling apart when someone from Lydia's past showed up. An old flame, someone she'd been involved with long ago, came back into her life, and that was the beginning of the end. She left me for him, and we divorced. I got custody of the kids and built my life around them from that point on. So why am I telling this story now? Because just last week, completely out of nowhere, Lydia showed up at my front door, wanting to be part of our lives again. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked worn down, pale, her eyes red and swollen like she hadn't slept in days. As soon as she saw me, she broke down crying. She was clutching a letter and looked like her whole world had just collapsed. The moment I opened the door, she wrapped her arms around me and sobbed uncontrollably. I was shocked, confused, and concerned, so I gently asked if she was all right. Through her sobs, she kept apologizing, saying she was sorry for leaving me. The kids were away at summer camp, so it was just the 2 of us in the house. After some time, she calmed down enough to tell me what had happened. The man she left me for, the one she was so sure about, had abruptly left her. Turns out, he'd gone back to his home country in southern Europe and left her with nothing but a note. "I'm sorry. I can't marry you. I have a wife and children back home." It was a gut punch. The guy had been living a double life, stringing Lydia along for years, making her believe they had a future. He never married her, never committed, and then he just disappeared. I didn't know how to process it. A part of me felt an odd sense of closure, like a chapter was finally ending. But another part of me felt sad seeing her so broken, even after all she'd done. It was a complicated knot of emotions. Karma definitely made its rounds, but I didn't throw any harsh words at her. Even though I couldn't help her, I still felt some sympathy. She told me she had no one else, that I was her only hope. She thought I'd take her back because I'd always been forgiving. But I had to speak the truth. I told her I'd moved on. I wasn't angry anymore. But that didn't mean she could just walk back into my life like nothing ever happened. I reminded her that I had already forgiven her once for cheating, and she turned around and did it again. She was so caught up in that other man that she didn't think twice about leaving her kids behind. The only reason she stayed faithful during our marriage was because he was overseas. Now that he abandoned her, she wanted to come home like nothing had changed. But I couldn't allow that cycle to start all over again. It wasn't easy, but I had to protect myself and our kids. I explained to her that while I understood her pain, I simply couldn't trust her anymore. She started crying again, begging for my forgiveness. I told her I had forgiven her, but forgiveness didn't mean we could hit rewind. I offered her the chance to have joint custody, but only if the kids were okay with it. That was the only compromise I was willing to make. She didn't want to leave. I had to be firm, more direct than I'm usually comfortable with, just to get her to understand. I told her I had errands to take care of and that it was time for her to go. She finally left, but her visit left me rattled. The truth is, I don't want any more chaos in my life. What I want now, what I've earned, is peace, and I intend to protect it. Letting her back in would only invite the same heartache I've already survived. And that's a risk I'm simply not willing to take. As hard as it is, I'm sticking to this path, for me and for my children. Now, here's the latest update. Update 1. Hey everyone. Just want to say a big thank you for all your messages. Whether you agreed with me, challenged me, or just shared your thoughts, I really do appreciate the time you took to reach out. Today, I want to share a little more of the backstory, especially for those of you who asked how everything between Lydia and me ended up falling apart the way it did. So here's how it all went down. Lydia and I had a pretty solid marriage for the most part. We spent 15 years together, and from the outside looking in, everything seemed fine. Smooth sailing. During that time, we had 2 beautiful kids. And honestly, Lydia was a fantastic mother and a loving wife. I never noticed any warning signs, nothing that made me worry. Then, out of nowhere, someone from her past came back. An old flame. He was the same guy she'd dated years ago but had broken up with because he wasn't ready to settle down. After their split, he moved back to his home country, but somehow, years later, he turned up in our town again. Suddenly, Lydia started spending time with him. At first, I didn't make a big fuss about it. She said she had no lingering feelings for the guy, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had more than a decade of history together and everything seemed steady. But then one night, something happened that made my gut twist. Lydia came home, walked straight past me and the kids, and locked herself in our bedroom. That was the first moment I truly felt like something was off. The kids and I knocked on the door several times around dinner, just trying to check in and see if she was okay or if she'd come join us. She didn't answer. Worried, I gave her a call on her cell. She sent a short text back, saying she was fine but needed some time alone. I didn't want to push her, so I let her be. That night, I crashed on the living room couch. The following morning, she acted like nothing unusual had happened, but I could tell something had shifted. When I gently asked what was bothering her, she said it was just a minor argument with her sister, nothing serious, and that she didn't want to talk about it. I didn't press. I'm not the kind of guy to stick my nose into her family issues, so I gave her space. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Over the next few days, it became clear that her mood wasn't about her sister at all. It had everything to do with that so-called friend from the past. Before this shift, Lydia used to mention him all the time. She even once suggested we have him over for dinner and drinks. But after that night, she shut herself in the bedroom. It was like he disappeared from her vocabulary. If I ever tried to bring him up, she'd dodge the conversation or flat out ignore my questions. I knew Lydia and her sister had their share of spats over the years, but she'd never been this shaken by them before. The whole thing just didn't add up. My gut kept telling me something else was going on. I'm not the type to spy or go digging through someone's personal stuff. That's never been my way. But after weeks of things feeling off, I finally sat her down and asked point blank if something had happened, if she had cheated on me with that guy. To my shock, she didn't try to deny it. She admitted it. She told me that when her ex came back into her life, it started off as innocent meetups in public places, coffee, catching up. But that slowly turned into something more. Eventually, they were meeting in private, and before long, their old flame was relit. I asked her straight up if she still loved him. She said no, it wasn't about love. She said she got caught up in the nostalgia, swept away in the moment, and made a huge mistake. She claimed it only happened once and the guilt had been eating her alive ever since. She also said she cut things off with him after that night, once she realized he didn't respect her the way she deserved. She cried while telling me all this, said she felt used by him and that she'd never betray me again. It was a lot to take in. My heart was crushed. Cheating is one of those things I take very seriously. It hit me hard. But after thinking it through, I chose to give her another chance. Some folks might say that was foolish. Maybe it was. But I still believed in the power of forgiveness and that people can change when they really want to. More than anything, I didn't want to tear our family apart. Our youngest was only 7 back then, and I just couldn't bear the idea of splitting up the household. So I forgave her. But I made one thing crystal clear: if anything like this ever happened again, whether it was physical or emotional, I wouldn't stick around. Lydia agreed. She promised me it would never happen again. From there, we started to patch things up. We got back to doing date nights. Took some vacations as a family. And for a while, it felt like we were turning a corner. Things seemed better on the surface at least. But I wasn't naive anymore. I kept my eyes open. And sure enough, not long after, I started noticing red flags again. I didn't brush them off this time. Once trust is broken, you can't afford to ignore your instincts. She started acting distant. She wasn't spending as much time with me or the kids, and around the house, she was moody, irritable. But then I'd catch her laughing at something on her phone or whispering during calls like a teenager. She'd barely acknowledge me in the evenings and seemed totally uninterested in intimacy, which was a big change from how she used to be. Her behavior felt cold, almost like she was somewhere else entirely, mentally, emotionally. Eventually, I brought it up again. I tried to talk to her calmly, hoping she'd be honest with me this time. But instead, she got defensive. Told me I was paranoid. Accused me of not letting go of the past and watching her like a hawk. When it became clear she wasn't going to come clean, I made a tough call. I decided to go through her phone. I hated the idea of it, but I needed to know the truth. Surprisingly, she hadn't changed her password. For a second, I thought maybe that meant she had nothing to hide. I scrolled through her messages and found a few old conversations with the same guy she'd cheated with before. But they were from months back, nothing new, nothing that proved they were still in touch. Before I could dig deeper or decide what to do next, Lydia came to me, and this time she confessed again. Lydia told me she knew I had gone through her phone and that it made her realize it was time to stop hiding things. She said she wanted to be completely upfront. After our first confrontation, she said she did her best to create distance between herself and that man. But he didn't give up easily. According to her, he kept reaching out, begging her to give him another shot. She tried to stay away, aware that continuing anything with him could destroy our already fragile marriage. But he was relentless. He told her over and over again that this time it was real, that he truly loved her, and that they'd get married soon. He just needed to take care of a few things first. Hearing all this left me in a tough spot. It became clear that, even though Lydia had tried to pull away, she was still emotionally caught up in whatever they had. The way she talked about it, I could tell the connection hadn't just disappeared. She admitted that they kept their renewed relationship a secret. She was torn, feeling guilty for cheating, but also believing this might be her only real shot at happiness with him now that he claimed to be serious. That's when I finally understood she had never truly stopped loving him. Back when they first broke up, it was because he couldn't commit. But now that he was making promises, she couldn't resist. Once he gave her the kind of commitment she had always wanted, it was like a floodgate opened. Eventually, Lydia asked for a divorce. She even initially wanted custody of the kids. But when I told her I wanted to keep them with me, she didn't fight me on it. That part really struck me. It felt like she was ready to walk away from the responsibilities of parenting, too. She asked if she could still see the kids once a week, and I said yes, with one condition. She had to be the one to explain everything to them. She sat them down and told them we were getting divorced because we had fallen out of love. She didn't badmouth me or twist the story, and for that I was genuinely thankful. We both knew the kids needed stability more than anything, and I respected her for handling that part gracefully. Even so, the news hit our kids like a freight train. There were tears, a lot of them. They begged us to try and fix things, to stay together. Watching their pain, hearing them cry, it made me angry at Lydia all over again for putting us in this position. But as time went on, I realized that even if she changed her mind and tried to fix the marriage, I just couldn't go back. Too much damage had been done. Too many lines crossed. So I stuck with the divorce. I promised the kids that I'd still be their rock, that I'd always be there. And they believed me because I always had been. I wasn't just the dad who was physically present. I'd been hands-on and involved in their lives from day one. Stepping into the role of a full-time single parent wasn't a shock. I'd already been doing the work. But even with all my efforts, the kids still missed their mom. We managed to keep the divorce civil. Sure, I was hurt deeply, but I didn't hold on to bitterness. Maybe some people would say I let her off too easy. Others might say it showed maturity. Honestly, it's probably a little of both, shaped by age and life experience. I let her go, not just for my own sanity, but for our children's well-being too. The months after the divorce were rough, especially on our youngest. I tried to keep their spirits up by taking them on road trips, planning little adventures, and making sure we stayed active and connected. I just wanted to help them heal in any way I could. Eventually, Lydia moved to Alabama with the same man she'd left us for. By that time, the kids and I had already begun adjusting to our new life. The worst of the emotional storm had passed. Fast forward 9 years, and I can proudly say that my children have grown into strong, kind-hearted, and emotionally intelligent young people. When Lydia first moved away, they were still clinging to her during calls, and it was clear they carried a lot of anger and hurt. But over time, they softened. They began to understand, to forgive, not because they forgot what she did, but because they matured and realized that people make their own choices and those choices have consequences. Recently, after coming home from summer camp, the kids found out what had happened, that Lydia had been abandoned by the very man she left us for. And surprisingly, they didn't seem all that sympathetic. It wasn't out of spite. They just saw it for what it was. Their mom had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. When I brought up the idea of her possibly having joint custody, both of them immediately pushed back. They were scared that if they started living with her, she might leave again the moment her ex came back into her life. Their fear was real, and it came from the instability they had already lived through. They didn't want to go through that pain again. So I sat down with them, listened to what they had to say, and reassured them that nothing would happen without their say-so. I told them their feelings mattered most, and I meant it. They told me straight up they wanted to stay with me. They believed if their mom was given another chance, she might fall right back into the same trap. As heartbreaking as it was, their response showed just how important it is to truly hear your kids when they're trying to protect themselves. Their trust in me and their desire to feel safe became the compass I followed while navigating everything that came next. Update 2. If this whole ordeal has taught me anything, it's that sometimes you need skin thick enough to withstand sandpaper. A few folks have left comments calling me names, saying I was weak, too soft, spineless. I don't take those words personally. I get that people have different opinions. But let me explain something. I'm 61. I come from a generation where we don't beg people to stay or fight for love that no longer wants to be there. When someone says they don't love us anymore, we let them go with dignity. But that doesn't mean we roll over and let ourselves be stepped on. There's a line between grace and self-respect. I've tried to walk it. I genuinely appreciate all the comments, critical or kind. But I want folks to understand where I'm coming from. Maybe I'm old school. Maybe I do things differently than what people expect nowadays. But I try to do what's right, even when it's hard. Recently, Lydia showed up again, this time while the kids were home on break from school. They weren't expecting her, and seeing her again stirred up all sorts of emotions, caused a bit of an uproar, to say the least. When Lydia showed up again while the kids were home, I reminded them to stay respectful and civil, no matter how awkward or uncomfortable it felt. They managed to talk with her for a little while, but it didn't take long before they politely excused themselves and went back to their rooms. It's not an easy situation for any of us, but we're handling it the best we can, doing our best to keep things calm and dignified, even when emotions are running high. At some point during her visit, Lydia asked me if there was any chance we could try again, start fresh, maybe even rebuild what we used to have. I didn't hesitate. I told her flat out that getting back together wasn't on the table. That door had closed a long time ago. I also told her that the kids weren't interested in moving in with her. I said she was welcome to talk with them herself and try to change their minds if she felt strongly about it, but I wasn't going to force them into anything they weren't comfortable with. To be honest, Deep down, I've had this feeling that she doesn't really want to take on full-time parenting responsibilities anymore. She confirmed as much when she admitted she couldn't afford to care for the kids full-time anyway. Turns out, she's been crashing on a friend's couch, living in a pretty unstable situation. She told me her friend could ask her to leave any day now. I knew things hadn't been great for her financially, but I didn't realize how bad it had actually gotten. Before our marriage, she'd worked as a receptionist, but she quit not long after we tied the knot. I had done my best to provide for her and give her a comfortable life while we were together. This latest conversation just added another layer to everything, reminding me that our current situation isn't just emotionally complicated. It's practically messy too. During the divorce, Lydia received a fair settlement. I made sure she walked away with a decent chunk of money. Out of curiosity, I asked her what had happened to it. That's when she told me she had given most of it to her affair partner to help him with his business plans. On top of that, she took on 2 jobs while living with him in Alabama to support their shared household. She really believed in the life they were trying to build together. But in the end, the guy took everything, her money, her trust, and her future. He walked away and left her with nothing. The only funds she had left were what she'd managed to hide from him, which she used to buy a ticket back here and cover basic expenses. Seeing how far she'd fallen, I offered to help. I told her I'd be willing to lend her some money so she could rent a small condo, get her bearings, and maybe start fresh. But she refused. She told me that her choices were never about money, that if financial security was what she wanted, she would have stayed with me. Instead, she had chased after love, even though it cost her nearly everything. And as much as I disagreed with her decisions, I could at least respect her honesty about why she made them. Lydia also said she wanted to come live with us again, as if we could just pick up where we left off. And while a part of me does feel compassion for her, especially seeing her in such a vulnerable state, I had to be real with her. There's simply no room for her in this home anymore. Still, I wanted to help her get on her feet. I wrote her a check to help cover rent for a small place and encouraged her to start looking for a job. I also gently suggested that therapy might help her work through everything she's been carrying for the last few years. I've always taught my kids that no matter what's happened, they should treat their mother with kindness. She's the one who brought them into this world, and for that alone, she deserves some respect. Thankfully, they've handled it with maturity, being polite but also setting clear boundaries. They don't want her fully back in their lives, and I've made sure Lydia knows that decision lies with them. Every now and then, Lydia sends me texts, usually late at night, asking if she even deserves the help I've given her. And truthfully, I don't always know how to respond. She's made some devastating choices, ones that hurt not just me but our children too. But seeing her struggle like this, it's hard not to feel something. Navigating these waters hasn't been easy. But I know where my priorities are. My kids come first. My job is to make sure they feel safe, supported, and stable. And if I can offer Lydia a little help along the way without disrupting that, I'll do what I can. But only within reason. Update 3. Thanks to everyone who reached out after the last update. It really means a lot. I know I've been quiet for a while, but truth be told, not much was changing for a time. Lydia kept showing up unannounced, going through emotional highs and lows, trying to convince me we could be a family again. It was becoming a cycle. But in the last 8 months, something new happened. And it's changed things in a subtle yet meaningful way. Actually, it started almost 2 years ago, before Lydia came crashing back into our lives. I met someone. Let's call her Clara. She's 65 and she owns a little flower shop downtown. From the outside, it might look like your typical boutique, but step inside and you'll find a woman with the energy and heart of someone half her age. At first, we were just friends. I'd stop by her shop every now and then, help her move a few pots, chat for a bit. But after spending about a year getting to know her, I realized I genuinely enjoyed being around her. These days, I spend a lot of my evenings and weekends helping out at the shop. Whether it's restocking vases or sweeping up petals, I like the calm. I like the company. What I really admire about Clara is the way she carries herself, so self-reliant, so steady. She's been through her own storms too. She lost her husband young and raised 4 kids all on her own. Now that they're grown and living their own lives, the flower shop has become both her work and her joy. Being around Clara has given me a sense of peace I didn't even realize I'd been missing. It's not about romance or replacing anyone. It's about connection. Two people in their 60s finding comfort in companionship without the baggage or expectations of youth. I haven't mentioned Clara to Lydia, and I don't intend to. I don't want her to think my refusal to reconcile is because there's someone else. Because honestly, even if Clara weren't in my life, my answer would still be the same. This isn't about revenge or moving on too fast. It's about clarity. About choosing peace over chaos. My kids know about Clara and they've been nothing but supportive. They like her. More importantly, they like seeing me happy again. They tell me I seem more alive, more present, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. My oldest is about to graduate high school and my youngest isn't far behind. They're becoming more independent with each passing day, and knowing I've got someone like Clara to share this next chapter with, it's comforting. There's still a long road ahead, I'm sure. But for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm walking in the right direction with good company by my side. Spending time with Clara has brought a quiet kind of joy into my life, the kind that sneaks up on you and reminds you that peace and companionship can still exist even after everything. Our relationship is simple, steady, and filled with the kind of laughter and understanding that doesn't need a lot of explanation. At this stage in life, having someone who shares your values and appreciates life's slower moments makes a world of difference. Clara's been more than just a friend. I've been able to talk to her about Eve. One evening, while I was helping Clara close up her shop, I realized Lydia was there. I hadn't seen her at first, but I caught her watching us from a distance, just standing there, not saying anything. It felt off, like she had been keeping tabs on me, maybe even following my routine. I later learned that she had noticed how often I was spending my evenings at Clara's, sometimes even staying overnight. And then one night, as I was locking up, she came at me, agitated, emotional, and full of accusations. She asked if Clara was the reason I wouldn't give her another chance. I was caught off guard. The way she came at me, the way she twisted my friendship into something scandalous, it stung. Especially considering her own history. She had stepped out of our marriage twice and had turned her back on our children. And now here she was questioning my integrity because I found comfort in the company of someone decent and honest. I tried to de-escalate things, but Lydia crossed several lines with her words. She even insulted Clara, which pushed me to speak up. I reminded her that while she had lied and cheated and abandoned the people who counted on her, what Clara and I had was built on truth and mutual respect. Nothing shady. Nothing underhanded. Just two adults enjoying each other's company with no secrets between us. Lydia didn't see the difference or didn't want to, and that moment made it painfully clear just how far apart we were, not just emotionally, but in how we viewed the world. That confrontation was a wake-up call, a reminder of why I'd drawn those boundaries in the first place. I'd had enough. In a moment of sheer frustration, I told her flat out that I didn't want her in my life anymore. I called out her selfish behavior, not just from the past few weeks, but going all the way back to when she walked away from our family. She just laughed. But what happened next was anything but funny. A few days later, Clara's flower shop was vandalized. Someone had left a note taped to the door. It said, "Leave him." There were no security cameras to catch who did it, but the timing and Lydia's recent outburst made the situation feel pretty obvious. I couldn't prove it, but I knew in my gut who was behind it. I wasn't about to let it slide. I urged Clara to file a police report. She was understandably hesitant. She's not the confrontational type, but I told her we had to take a stand. This kind of behavior couldn't be tolerated. Then I decided it was time to confront Lydia directly. I called her over and didn't hide anything. I said everything I needed to say in front of our kids. It wasn't something I wanted to do in front of them, but she had already tried painting me as the bad guy to them, twisting the narrative of our marriage to fit her victim story. I needed to speak the truth, and I needed them to hear it. I laid out the facts, told her that if she ever harassed me or Clara again, I would pursue legal action. No more warnings, no more leniency. It was intense, emotional, but it finally opened the door for our kids to speak up. For the first time, they let out all the anger they'd been holding back. They spoke about the pain of watching their mother leave, about the confusion, about how hard it had been trying to process everything while she played the victim and blamed me for everything that went wrong. That confrontation may have been hard, but it was necessary. And since then, about a month now, Lydia hasn't come around. No texts, no visits, no surprise appearances. Just silence. And honestly, it's been peaceful. In the aftermath, I helped Clara clean up her shop and made sure she knew how sorry I was that she got pulled into this mess. If anything, the whole experience just strengthened the bond between us. We got through it together. The kids see how well we get along, and they've even started joking that I should marry her before they head off to college. It's sweet. But Clara, we don't feel the need to get married. We're happy the way things are. We love and respect each other, but we also value our independence. We don't need rings or paperwork to validate what we have. Right now, I feel content. I'm focused on being the best dad I can be to two amazing kids. I'm also proud to be the man who stands beside Clara, supportive, steady, and free of unnecessary drama. This life, as quiet and simple as it is, feels right. And after everything we've been through,